The morning began like any other calm Tuesday in Maple Ridge Estates, a quiet suburb where the loudest sounds were usually a distant lawnmower or a dog barking at the mail carrier. I was on my porch with a mug of coffee when 6 black SUVs turned onto our street and stopped in front of the house across from mine. Within seconds, agents in dark jackets marked with bold yellow letters, FBI, were moving swiftly through Patricia Lawson's front door. Their formation was precise and practiced, and before long they were carrying out boxes of documents. Patricia stood on her front lawn in her slippers and that ever-present sash announcing her as the Homeowners Association president, yelling that it was all a terrible misunderstanding, something about voluntary donations. But that scene didn't appear out of nowhere. To understand it, we have to go back a few months. My name is Daniel Foster. 3 months earlier, my family and I had moved to Maple Ridge Estates, believing we'd found our dream home, 247 Pine Valley Court, a lovely colonial with a wide front porch and a generous backyard where our 3 children could run free. What made it even better was an old property line quirk from the 1970s that meant our home technically sat outside the Maple Ridge HOA boundary. We thought that loophole was a small miracle. Patricia Lawson thought otherwise. The day after our moving truck pulled away, Patricia appeared at our door right on schedule, clipboard in hand, and a smile as sharp as glass. Despite the 90-degree heat, she wore a blazer embroidered with HOA President in gold thread, as though it were an official uniform. She introduced herself with polished politeness and then casually mentioned that, while we weren't technically required to join the HOA, contributing the monthly $95 fee would be in our best interest. She spoke as if it were not optional. I replied politely that our property wasn't part of the HOA, so we wouldn't be paying dues. Her smile faltered only for an instant before tightening into something less friendly. She warned that I was making a mistake and that everyone in Maple Ridge participated in the community fund. Then came the phrase she would use repeatedly in the months ahead. Neighborhood harmony depends on universal participation. I thanked her for stopping by and closed the door. That, I would learn, was mistake number 1. Patricia didn't take rejection lightly. The pressure began quietly. Each morning, a new flyer appeared under my windshield wiper, colorful pamphlets praising the benefits of HOA membership. At first, they were merely irritating, but soon the messages grew unnerving. Unity through compliance, the dangers of nonconformity. Then came typed notes slipped into our mailbox, gentle reminders to uphold community standards. Before long, Patricia started showing up at the edge of our property with a tape measure, recording the height of our grass and the position of our trash bins. One morning, I caught her kneeling beside our flower bed, measuring the space between rose bushes. When I asked what she was doing, she looked me squarely in the eye and said, "Proper spacing is critical for property values." She wasn't joking. She carried a binder, color-coded, of course, full of landscaping rules she'd written herself. At first, my wife Sarah found it funny. She would wave at Patricia through the window while our self-appointed neighborhood inspector scribbled in her notebook. The humor ended the day Patricia began taking photographs of our children playing outside and posting them on the neighborhood Facebook page with captions like, "Unsupervised children lowering community safety standards." That crossed a line. Sarah's amusement turned to fury. Patricia's online crusade expanded rapidly. She filled Facebook with lengthy posts about how non-HOA properties degraded neighborhoods. She even produced fake charts claiming that homes within 500 feet of a non-member lost 30% of their value each year. I decided to try a diplomatic approach. I invited her over for coffee, hoping a calm conversation might smooth things over. She seemed pleasant enough, even complimented Sarah's banana bread, and assured me she understood our position. 2 days later, a police cruiser parked in front of our house. The officer explained they'd received a report about a possible fence height violation. After measuring and finding nothing wrong, he mentioned it was the 3rd such complaint that week, all from the same individual. The officer, a weary man named Deputy Richards, quietly admitted that Patricia was well known at the station. She called so frequently that they had created a separate file just for her. He suggested we begin documenting every interaction. That evening, Sarah decided to take action. She's a forensic accountant by trade, someone who notices when numbers don't add up. While I gathered evidence of Patricia's harassment, Sarah examined the HOA's finances. What she found was puzzling. The association collected $95 a month from 142 homes, over $13,000 monthly. Yet the only visible community projects were a few flower beds and a modest summer picnic. The math didn't fit. Sarah filed formal requests for the HOA's financial statements. Patricia ignored them. Instead, she began hosting meetings in her backyard, deliberately positioning her loudspeakers toward our house. The gatherings consisted mostly of speeches about the dangers of noncompliance and warnings about households that refused to contribute. Undeterred, Sarah dug deeper. Her research revealed that the Maple Ridge HOA wasn't a registered nonprofit at all. It had never filed for 501c3 status, wasn't registered with the state, and had no legitimate board or elections. Patricia Lawson had been collecting over $160,000 annually under the guise of community dues, with no oversight whatsoever. Through public records and meticulous cross-checking, Sarah tracked Patricia's spending. The results looked like a true crime case file: luxury spa purchases, vacations to Cabo San Lucas, and an extravagant collection of ceramic unicorns labeled as neighborhood beautification. The most blatant expense was a $40,000 kitchen renovation logged as HOA headquarters improvements. Sarah assembled a detailed report, connecting each questionable transaction to fake meeting minutes Patricia had filed with the county. But those meetings had never taken place. Neighbors confirmed they had never attended any official sessions. Once the report was complete, Sarah submitted it to the IRS, the state attorney general, and the FBI's white-collar crime unit. Then we waited. While investigations brewed, Patricia escalated her harassment campaign. She accused us of running an illegal daycare because children played in our yard. She reported our golden retriever, Max, as a public nuisance. She contacted the health department over supposed garbage violations. When I took family photos in the backyard, she claimed we were operating a commercial photography business. A birthday party for our 8-year-old became a suspicious gathering. She even called the fire marshal about unsafe grill practices. Each claim proved baseless. Local officials began to recognize her pattern. Deputy Richards told me they were documenting her false reports and considering legal action for misuse of emergency services. Then came Patricia's critical mistake. She mailed a letter to every homeowner announcing that, due to new state regulations, HOA dues would rise to $150 per month, effective immediately. The notice threatened legal action and property liens against non-payers. The letterhead appeared official, complete with a fake state registration number and warnings about wage garnishment. The message frightened many residents, especially seniors and young families already under financial strain. At the next HOA meeting, when several neighbors challenged her, Patricia remained unmoved. She told them bluntly that financial hardship wasn't her concern and that preserving property values required sacrifice. Unfortunately for her, one of those residents, George Hoffman, was a retired federal prosecutor. George wasn't convinced by Patricia's explanation. He began his own quiet investigation and soon compared notes with Sarah. Together, they built a comprehensive picture of Patricia's scheme. George still had contacts in federal law enforcement, and a few calls later, the authorities began moving swiftly. The evidence of fraud was overwhelming. Patricia had embezzled more than $400,000 over 6 years, falsifying tax documents and using the HOA as her personal bank account. She even fabricated meeting minutes showing unanimous votes for her self-appointed president for life position, complete with a $60,000 annual salary. Her so-called board members were fictitious. Some were names of people who had moved away years earlier, others apparently invented. One member, Jennifer Excellence, turned out to be the name of Patricia's childhood doll. When George and Sarah turned over their compiled evidence, the investigation accelerated. Agents uncovered multiple hidden bank accounts and a shell company, Lawson Community Services LLC, supposedly created for neighborhood improvements. In reality, it served one purpose: funneling HOA money directly into Patricia's personal accounts. And that brings us back to that quiet Tuesday morning. Just 3 months after we'd moved in, I watched from my porch as FBI vehicles surrounded Patricia's house. Agents carried out boxes of files, computers, and binders filled with doctored records. They even found Patricia's handwritten ledgers tucked away in the attic, detailing how she siphoned funds, and outlining plans to expand her operation into nearby HOAs. When agents finally escorted Patricia outside in handcuffs, she was still shouting that it was all a misunderstanding. She screamed at me personally, insisting that if I had just paid my fair share, none of this would have happened. She accused me of destroying the harmony of Maple Ridge Estates and warned that property values would collapse without her. But the truth was out. Investigators charged her with mail fraud, wire fraud, tax evasion, and racketeering. Even her absurd collection of ceramic unicorns, valued at $30,000, was listed among the seized assets. At trial, Patricia claimed she believed she was entitled to the money as compensation for her hard work. The prosecutor calmly displayed one of her purchases, a boat named Community Pride, bought entirely with HOA funds. He pointed out that Maple Ridge Estates didn't even have a lake. Patricia insisted the boat was intended for community lake patrols. The jury was unmoved. She was convicted on every count. The judge, visibly exhausted by her constant interruptions, sentenced Patricia Lawson to 5 years in federal prison and ordered her to repay $487,000 to the homeowners she had defrauded. For the first time since our arrival in Maple Ridge Estates, Patricia's confidence crumbled. She wept openly, still insisting she had done nothing wrong and that the neighborhood would collapse without her leadership. As the bailiffs led her from the courtroom, she was still shouting warnings about property values and neighborhood decline. But standing there, watching her disappear through those doors, I realized something I hadn't heard in months. Quiet. Real, uninterrupted quiet. And that silence was the sound of freedom returning to Maple Ridge Estates.